Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back in time, not to a grand battlefield or a glittering palace, but to a dusty trail somewhere just outside the walls of ancient Chang'an, where your mouth is already dry, your boots already too tight, and your backpack oddly crunchy. You're about to embark on the Silk Road, and your first mistake, accepting the snacks packed for you by the local innkeeper, who promised these would last the whole journey. Spoiler, they just might last forever. That brick-shaped thing wrapped in wax paper. It's a mung bean biscuit, as in, it tastes like a biscuit made from dry mud and quiet disappointment. And that flat chewy disc in the linen pouch, that's a horse bean patty, chewed for protein, spit out for texture. And yes, that's a real thing, but let's not judge too quickly. The Silk Road isn't a picnic. It's 7,000 kilometers of wind, dust, and polite lies about how the weather is nice this time of year. You've barely crossed the gate, and already the road stretches like an endless noodle through valleys, mountains, deserts, and, surprise, more desert. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video, and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments what city are you in right now, and what time is it over there. I always love seeing where you all are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The road outside Chang'an is buzzing with the clatter of hooves and wooden wheels. You're not alone. Traders, monks, and bureaucrats shuffle past, everyone sweating under their robes and pretending not to notice the smell of dry yak butter wafting from someone's supply car. You pause for a break, kneeling beside a cracked clay milestone marked with fading red ink. You unwrap one of your travel rations, the infamous Maya dough bean horse tooth bean biscuit. And no, it's not named for horses. It's named for the sound your teeth make when they hit it, like a distant drum roll of regret. You try to bite it, nothing happens. You flip it over like that might change its density. Still no luck. A passing soldier sees you struggling and hands you a small stone. For cracking it open, he says, you thank him, because apparently that's a normal thing now. Despite your snack situation, the mood is still hopeful. You've got your camel rental receipt, your silk pouch of bronze coins, and 3 travel talismans tied to your belt on for luck. One for safety, and one just in case the first don't work. At your side, a group of Buddhist monks walk silently, munching on dry lotus seeds. You sneak a glance into their cloth bag. It's full of more seeds. And is that roasted barley? You're starting to suspect that this journey will be less about exotic adventure and more about gastrointestinal resilience. But don't worry, that's part of the charm. Historians still debate what exactly travelers on the early Silk Road ate. Some records mention preserved bean cakes, pickled vegetables, or even fermented millet rolls, which sound fancy but usually ended up as brick-like snacks with a shelf life longer than some empires. A few ancient texts describe dried fruits pressed into flat cakes, apricots, plums, sometimes figs. These were sticky, sweet, and dense enough to pull out your molars if you chewed carelessly. You glance down at your own snack pouch. The innkeeper claimed there were raisins in here. You shake the pouch. It sounds suspiciously silent. Still, you press on. The mountains ahead are a hazy blue in the late afternoon sun, and the road begins to tilt upward. Your feet ache, your lips chap, and the mung bean biscuit is still in your mouth, absorbing all available moisture like a sponge from hell. By dusk, you make camp beside a half-dried stream. Traders gather around small fires, swapping stories, coughing politely into their sleeves when someone opens a jar of pickled fish. You decide to skip dinner. You lay down on your old blanket, chewing slowly, thoughtfully, on a single dried date that might have been alive in the Han Dynasty. Above you, stars begin to blink into view. Tomorrow, there will be raisins. Maybe. The next morning starts with the smell of dust and someone loudly regretting last night's pickled turnip. You sit up, rubbing your eyes, and reach for your satchel. You've developed a system now. Check for your coin pouch, your passport scroll, and, of course, your snack stash. Still intact, still tragic. You unwrap a dry cake of compressed barley, affectionately referred to by travelers as jaw training. It's less a meal, more a lesson in humility. You take a cautious bite. It's like chewing a roof tile. Across the campfire, a merchant from Sardinia is roasting something on a stick. You lean closer. What's that? He smiles. Pine nut dumpling, family recipe. It smells sweet, nutty, maybe even edible. You consider trying. He eyes your snack pouch and asks, "You got raisins?" You pause, carefully open the pouch. A single, mummified raisin stares back at you, like it survived 3 dynasties and a minor flood. "Maybe," you say. He shrugs. "Fair." And just like that, you've bartered your first cross-cultural snack trade. A humble pine nut dumpling for a dehydrated lump that may or may not still be a fruit. You win, probably. As the caravan moves westward, your path dips through the Hershey corridor, a narrow strip of green nestled between mountains and desert. This is where supply stops get sparse and snacks get creative. Somewhere near Jonia, a local herbalist joins your caravan. She carries baskets of dried pear slices, lotus roots soaked in vinegar, and something called dry tofu sticks, which look like scrolls that were rejected by Confucius. "Good for stamina," she says. You try one. It tastes neutral, like paper, with ambition. Still, it's a step up from your barley roof tile. The monks nearby pass around roasted chickpeas. One of them sneezes into the bowl. Nobody says anything, but suddenly, everyone's really into sharing spiritual energy instead of snacks. Later that day, you stop at a small shrine tucked against a cliffside. There's a stone basin filled with spring water, and next to it, a clay bowl of offerings, apricot slices and dry persimmon. No one touches them, not because they're sacred, but because they're coated in sand and disappointment. You light a stick of incense. You whisper your hopes for safe travels. You take a persimmon anyway. It's chewy. Scholars still argue over what counted as snacks in this era. Some say anything not boiled in a pot was a snack. Others claim it had to be portable, non-perishable, and emotionally unfulfilling. Trade logs mention compressed wheat bricks and tea eggs soaked in ashes, but no one agrees if these were meals, medicines, or passive-aggressive gifts. You pass a farmer leading goats. He's chewing on something stringy. "Goat jerky?" you ask. "Apricot leather?" he replies, proudly. "Made it myself." You nod. You try not to think about how it looks like goat jerky anyway. That night, while camping near a dry ravine, someone starts sharing stories around the fire. A traveler from the west claims she once ate a date stuffed with pickled walnuts and honey. A monk recalls the spicy almond cakes once served to pilgrims outside Dunholm, spiced not with chili, but with mystery herbs and maybe a little too much cumin. You think back to your single pine nut dumpling. You miss it already. Before you fall asleep, you check your snack pouch one more time. There are no raisins, only dreams. By now, your relationship with food has become something spiritual, not in a philosophical sense, just in that I now understand suffering kind of way. The caravan reaches a bend in the trail, where the land flattens into rolling grassland, and for the first time in days, you spot a cluster of yurts. Smoke curls gently from their tops, carrying the scent of something warm, fatty, and entirely not barley. You nearly cry. A local shepherd waves your group in, offering hospitality in the form of air-dried curds, salty tea, and something he calls milkskin. You don't ask what it is. You just eat it. It's chewy, creamy, and slightly sour, like a cheese that dreams of becoming leather. You love it. He gives you more. This is where you learn the secret truth of the Silk Road. No one agrees on what food is, or should be, or how to serve it. In some towns, a snack is goat long boiled with herbs. In others, it's sugar-dusted rice crackers wrapped in bamboo leaves. One man in your caravan eats nothing but dried mulberries dipped in vinegar. Good for the joints, He insists, good for making me cry. You reply. Midway through a stretch of open grassland, your group encounters a traveling entertainer and his assistant, a girl who sells roasted grains and paper cones. You buy a cone out of curiosity. It tastes like toasted air, with a hint of maybe this used to be food. Still, it's warm and pleasant, and the crunch reminds you of a less ambitious popcorn. Grain of the wind, she calls it. Sounds poetic. You save some for later, and then immediately regret not eating it all when you realize she's already disappeared into the dust with her mule. At a watering stop, a Kazakh elder offers you a thin slab of smoked horse meat. He slices it with care, lays it on a flat stone, and lets the sun warm it. You try a bite. It's powerful, like meat that's seen things, like a memory of running. You nod politely and chew for what feels like 3 moons. Later that night, by the fire, the monk beside you finally breaks his silence. I used to think food was a distraction, he says. Now I see it is a lesson in impermanence. You both stare at your rations. He adds, especially these apricot pits. They're eternal. And he's right. They're like trying to snack on fossilized memories. Still, no one complains too much. There's a kind of joy in how bad it all is. It becomes a joke, a ritual, a shared identity. What did you suffer through today? Becomes the new greeting. Even the camel gets in on it. One evening, you catch it sniffing a pouch of dried lentil cakes, then promptly sneezing in disgust. You don't blame it. Historians still debate what ancient travelers really ate. Some records describe elaborate feasts, while others mention people surviving on gruel and hope. There's mention of fermented millet, foraged roots, steamed buns stuffed with turnip paste, and even portable soup of concentrated meat jelly stored in wax. It sounds fancy. It smells like abandonment. One popular theory claims many snacks weren't meant to be enjoyed. They were meant to last. If you could bite through it, it was probably too fresh. As your group crosses into the foothills near the Pamir Mountains, someone hands you a local delicacy, candied rose petals wrapped around a sliver of ginger. You bite in cautiously. It's delicate, fragrant, and then the ginger punches you in the soul. Delightful, isn't it? The trader grins. You cough. It has opinions. The truth is, even the worst snack on the Silk Road carries a story, a culture, a climate, a clever little act of survival. You begin to appreciate them not for how they taste, but for the fact they exist at all. The grain of the wind, the milk that became skin, the apricot that aged afar. Somewhere along the path, you stop longing for fresh bread or sweet fruit. You just want one more strange bite to remember. You start noticing a pattern, not in the stars above or the footsteps in sand, but in the way your fellow travelers talk about snacks. They don't describe them by taste. They describe them by situation. This one saved my life in a blizzard. I chewed it for 3 days during a siege. My uncle swore by this before every camel race. Came in fourth once. You begin to realize the Silk Road snacks weren't created for enjoyment. They were created for conditions, for terrain, for trade, for stomachs that couldn't afford to be picky. That dried apple sliver from earlier, it wasn't sweet. It was reliable. That lentil pebble, not tasty, but immortal. Take, for example, the brick. Not a real brick. Well, actually, yes, a real brick. Compressed rice, barley, beans, and spices, hardened into a compact, cube-like shape meant to be softened in water, or chewed like a personal challenge. You try one, it cracks your molar. A merchant laughs and says, now you've eaten the road itself. He might not be wrong. You meet a Mongolian rider with a pouch of wind-dried beef strips. They're older than some dynasties. He passes you one like it's a ceremonial offering. You bite in, your jaw protests. Your soul leaves your body briefly. You get used to it. He says, you don't. Later, camped near a canyon pass, the Roman trader you've mostly avoided offers you something he calls lipum. It's a small, dense cake made of cheese and flour, honey glazed and slightly burned around the edges. You're suspicious. He's to claim his boots are to white, but the cake smells hopeful. You take a bit and almost cry. It's not sweet by modern standards, but after fermented apricots and horse turkey, it tastes like forgiveness. You ask him where he got it. He shrugs. Family recipe. My aunt used to make them before the Parthians stole our garden. You don't ask for clarification. You just nod and eat in peace. Historians suggest these kinds of cross-cultural culinary collisions were common. Cabin streets, roadside inns, or melting pots of flavor, fragrance, and foot blisters. Travelers would trade food, stories, and probably several intestinal parasites. Some evidence points to Indo-Greek snacks, spiced figs dipped in yogurt. Others reference Persian dried citrus cakes or Chinese honeyed dates, but the records are sketchy. Recipes weren't written, they were lived. Tests from hand to hand, mouth to mouth. Most were improvised. Some were accidents that refused to die. A recent theory by one sleep-deprived historian suggests that snacks often evolved from failed attempts at more ambitious meals. Soup gone wrong became jelly. He wrote, bread gone dry became travel cake. You believe it, you also start to understand why so many snacks were fermented. Without refrigeration, controlled raw was the only option. Yogurt, pickles, wine, fancy rot. You respect the ingenuity. You just wish it smelled better. One night, a child in your group offers you a palm-sized ball of something wrapped in cloth. You unwrap it carefully. It's a dense cluster of puffed millet, honey, and dried plum. Festival food, she says, only made when no one's fighting. You eat it slowly, savoring the soft chew and the bursts of tartness. For once, something doesn't taste like desperation. You offer her a thank you smile. She shrugs, wipes her nose on her sleeve, and runs off to terrorize the camels. You sit quietly after that, holding the cloth the snack came in. You realize something simple and profound. Snacks on the Silk Road aren't just edible. They're emotional. They're bookmarks in people's lives. Proof that someone, somewhere, wanted to make the journey just a little more bearable. You stare into the fire and wonder, centuries from now, will anyone remember these small bites? You hope so. Because right now, they're the only thing reminding you that humans are stubborn enough to want joy even in the middle of nowhere. You thought you'd adjusted. You've grown used to the salt, the crunch, the chewiness that borders on punishment. But then you reach a small oasis town and everything resets. Because someone hands you a snack cube that sings. Not literally, of course, but that's how it feels. It's golden brown, wrapped in a thin reed leaf. Still slightly warm. Inside, dates mashed with crushed almonds, dusted with saffron and rolled in sesame. When you take a bite, your brain forgets how camels smell. You blink slowly. What is this? The vendor grins. A taste of home. But whose home? That depends. It tells you it's called Mabaroma, and it's traveled almost as far as you have, starting in ancient Mesopotamian kitchens and evolving with every hand that tried to improve it. Some added honey, others added pistachios. One group tried to ferment it. That version didn't last. You nibble the rest in silence, feeling like you've just unlocked a cheat code for the Silk Road. According to some scholars, confections like these weren't just indulgences, they were cultural ambassadors, easier to carry than scrolls, friendlier than diplomats, sweeter than most ancient treaties. Sweets traveled well, and people remembered the ones that tasted like stories. You meet a Kashmiri trader who offers you a pocket full of dried apricots soaked in rosewater. He tells you they were once used as payment in mountain passes when coins were too heavy. Lighter, he says, and twice as persuasive. He's probably exaggerating, but you buy 3. Then there's the walnut candy from Samarkand, boiled in grape molasses and left to hang like edible jewelry. The peanut brittle from an anonymous desert workshop. The pistachio nougat you're warned not to chew unless you've recently visited a dentist. Still, you chew it. You regret it, but only slightly. Historians today still debate whether such luxurious snacks are reserved for the wealthy or shared more widely. Some ancient texts described sugar as a rare treasure, while others mention roadside vendors selling syrup-glazed fruit by the handful. One theory argues that sweet snacks acted as status signals in diplomatic encounters. Others believe they were tools for moral comfort in a world where you might sleep beside a goat and wake up with frost on your eyebrows. You find your favorite one in an unlikely place: a wrapped cake of pressed grape paste, almonds, and what the merchant calls fig jam with ambition. It's dense, earthy, and oddly complex, like it's trying to tell you about its childhood. You ask if there's a name for it. He nods. We call it rumor bread. You raise an eyebrow. Because it spreads fast. He says with a wink. Of course it does. You begin keeping a small pouch of your favorites, carefully wrapped and packed. They're not just snacks now. They're souvenirs, each one a reminder of a place, a person, a terrible toilet situation. You start offering pieces to other travelers. A slice of date bar to the Roman, half a candy almond to the camel handler, a single rose-soaked apricot to a monk who'd lost his voice from too much chanting. They all thank you like you've handed them treasure. One of them even tears up a little. You don't say anything, but quietly, you agree it is treasure. Because on a road like this, sweetness is rare and meant to be shared. You're a few days west of Turpan, when the novelty of sweet starts to wear thin. Not because you don't like thing, no, you still treasure every fig-filled lump like it's gold-wrapped in nostalgia, but because your stomach begins a quiet rebellion. Your body wants salt, your body wants crunch, your body wants a questionable skewer of something roasted over questionable charcoal by a man with very questionable hygiene standards. You oblige. The skewer crackles as he hands it over. Yak turkey, he says. You nod. Yak. Then he leans closer, cautiously. You don't haste. You bite. It's dry, peppery, a little chewy, and it makes your jaw work harder than it has in weeks. But there's comfort in it, something primal, like knowing your way through history. These weren't snacks made for ease. They were made for endurance. Traders, guards, monks all had versions of this. Pressed meat, dried fish, salty seeds roasted with ash, and of course, the infamous salted plums that could probably double as slingshot ammo in a pinch. One traveler pulls out a pouch of spiced lentil crackers and says they were designed to keep for months without going stale. They survive everything, he says, except mild humidity. Then they explode. You believe him. The further you go, the more you see how essential these salty, crunchy, often suspicious-looking snacks were to survival. You pass a group of Sogdian mercenaries, sharing roasted chickpeas dipped in something vinegary. A Persian caravan leader swears by dry cucumbers with salted mint, which you try once, and then immediately try to forget. And of course, there's salted goat, often described in travel logs as a brave choice. You try it, you are brave. Modern scholars argue about the role of salt on the Silk Road, not just in flavor, but in preservation and power. Salted snacks weren't just food. They were logistics, portable calories, compact nutrition, mood management. Even one academic suggests salted almonds were used as early focus snacks during long merchant negotiations. Another theory proposes that the crunch itself had a psychological benefit, offering stress relief, the way ancient stress balls could only dream of. You're pretty sure that's nonsense, but after 6 hours of rocky terrain and one terrifying bridge crossing involving a goat that refused to yield, you find yourself chewing dry radish slices with the desperation of a man holding on to sanity via pickled fruit fiber. They help somehow. You meet a Chinese herbalist who insists her dried lotus seeds were blessed under the full moon. She claims they protect against travel fatigue, snake bites, and awkward silences. You buy a small bag. They do absolutely nothing, but they taste like home, wherever that may be. Late one night, you sit by the fire, your pouch open, the air filled with distant laughter and the crunch of Typhoon's salted broad beans. A fellow traveler offers you a paper-thin sheet of pressed seaweed. It tastes like the ocean, and regret. You still finish it, because even out here, with all the dust and distance and aching joints, there's something beautiful in the shared ritual of the imperfect snack. You all eat, you all laugh, you all regret, and then you do it again tomorrow. The mountains loom ahead, their jagged edges poke in the sky like broken pottery. The path grows narrow, and your pace slows. Wind whistles through the canyons, tugging at your sleeves, sneaking under your cloak. That's when you meet your first yet butterball. You're cold, tired, and someone hands you a small lump that looks like a sad marble made of wax. What is it? You ask, cautiously sniffing. Highland energy, says a Tibetan traveler. Butter, dried milk, a pinch of barley flour, maybe a prayer. You take a bite. It's dense, chewy, a little salty, a little grassy, somehow also dry and oily at the same time. Your tongue is confused, but your body perks up. You feel warmer, sharper, less like a blanket with legs. Turns out, yak butter snacks were a staple for high-altitude travelers loaded with fat and carbs, perfect for long days in thin air. You learned that monks, nomads, and even couriers on imperial missions swore by them. Some made it plain, others mixed it with tea. A few, you're told, used it to bribe mountain spirits. You nod. That last one sounds practical. In a cliffside outpost, a wrinkled nun gives you a pouch of something softer, dried cheese curds rolled with herbs. Pilgrim food, she says, good for strength, not for breath. She's not kidding. They taste like garlic's forgotten cousin, who took a vow of silence but not of odor. But you eat them anyway, because up here, comfort comes in unexpected forms. Warm stones under your feet, extra firewood shared without a word, and with dairy lumps that give you just enough energy to keep walking. One stormy night, stuck in a narrow mountain pass, you sit in a cave with a group of strangers huddled together. No one talks much, just the sound of wind and the slow ritual of unwrapping small bundles of paper, cloth, leather pouches, and sharing whatever's inside. You try something smoky and sour. It tastes like a mistake. You try something crumbly and sweet. It tastes like forgiveness. Everyone shares. No one asks. You hear later that some of these highland snacks weren't just for survival, they were also offerings. Bits of food placed at shrines, crossroads, and cave mouths. A gesture of respect, a hope for safe passage. Sometimes, maybe, just a superstition. Historians debate whether these offerings had standardized recipes. One theory suggests there was a secret code. Shape and size indicated the type of wish. Another theory, more cynical, claims people just used whatever was about to go stale. Both might be true. As you descend from the mountain days later, your path lighter but your heart strangely full. You realize something. Those little butter balls might not have tasted great, but they made the journey feel shared. You weren't just a lonely traveler with a stinky jar. You were part of a long tradition of people helping people, one confusing snack at a time. The terrain softens as you descend into a green valley, dotted with low shrubs and sleepy sheep. For a moment, everything feels gentle. No biting winds, no sharp rocks, just the sound of hooves in soft dirt, and a distant bell tinkling like a lullaby. That's when someone offers you a honeyed fig stuffed with crushed walnuts. You pause. It looks suspiciously delightful. The fig is sun-dried, slightly sticky. The nuts now roasted. You take a bit and instantly forget the yak butter ball ever existed. This tastes like luxury, like a dream that's been dipped in sugar and aged in the sun. It turns out, along the more fertile stretches of the Silk Road, sweet snacks flourished, especially the kind you could carry easily. Dried fruits, preserved in ways both practical and poetic. A merchant from the Sogdian lands tells you that figs were sacred to his ancestors. They believed the seeds inside were stars. He says, eat a fig, carry a constellation in your belly. That's kind of adorable. You learn about candy almonds, dipped in syrup, and dried till they rattled. Apricot leather, rolled into scrolls. Grape must boiled down into chewy candies that looked like little amber stones. Kids used to trade them. Couriers used them as bribes. One legend even says a poet once fell in love with a prince after receiving a particularly fragrant candied quince. Was the quince enchanted, or was the poet just very hungry? History doesn't say. You pass through an orchard village, where every household has its own recipe for sleeping pears, whole fruits soaked in spiced wine and dried under silk screens. Locals say they help with bad dreams. One woman claims they were originally made to bribe insomnia itself. You buy 3. They smell like cinnamon and patience, but it's not all soft fruit and gentle spice. One dusty stop offers you something tougher, literally, a dried melon rind, sun-baked and salted, chewy as old sandals. You ask, why would anyone eat this? The vendor shrugs. Good for teeth. You're not convinced, but you chew. Historians argue about the origin of many of these sweet Silk Road snacks. Some claim they evolved from ancient temple offerings. Others believe they were just clever ways to deal with fruit surplus. One particularly dramatic theory insists that fig stuffing was once a form of culinary diplomacy. Hostile tribes would meet, eat stuffed dates, and negotiate peace over sticky fingers. Whatever the truth, one thing is clear. Sweetness wasn't just for celebration. It was for survival, for morale, for memory. One evening, sitting beneath a pomegranate tree, you unwrap the last of your honeyed figs and think about home. Not just yours, but everyone's. The sweet things people carry when they travel. The flavors they hope will make strangers smile. You take a bite. It's a little squished now, a little warm from your pack, but still sweet, still soft. The sun sets. Your jaw gurgles faintly. You hum to yourself. And for the first time in days, you don't mind the smell. You've crossed dunes, mountains, rivers, and markets, but nothing prepares you for the moment you encounter the cheese. It's not advertised. It doesn't glisten in a golden tray. It just sits there, quietly, wrapped in waxcloth and buried under dried herbs at a roadside stall run by an elderly woman with zero desire to explain anything. You point, she nods. 2 coins. You pay. She hands you a piece. It's small, square, slightly crumbly, and it smells like ancient socks left inside a temple bell during monsoon season. This is Central Asian fermented cheese, possibly from sheep, possibly from goats, possibly from a creature history has yet to fully identify. You take a bite. The flavor hits in stages. First, salt, man, sour, then a brief, alarming zing like licking a battery, then, somehow, smoke, and finally, a finish of grass and what you can only describe as medieval confusion. You cough politely. It's bold. The woman beams. Made it myself. Buried for 3 months. She offers you a small pouch of something to help it settle. You ask what it is. She says, trust. You take the pouch. As you walk, the cheese slowly begins to win you over. It's terrible but also kind of fascinating. It's the flavor equivalent of a riddle. Some scholars think it was originally created by mistake when curds were stored in animal stomachs for too long. Others believe it was part of warrior deeds portable protein. Battle-ready breath control. One Chinese chronicle refers to this kind of cheese as when dried curd. A traveler once described it as so pungent it speaks in dreams. A little dramatic, maybe, but not entirely wrong. You meet a nomad who tells you, we call it sky milk. It makes you strong. You ask if he eats it often. He laughs. No, but my grandmother insists. Grandmothers are undefeated across empires. Later, at camp, you share your cheese with a monk. He chews slowly, nods, and says, this reminds me of the concept of Ducalit's fundamental unsatisfactoriness. You don't know whether to thank him or apologize. Still, it sticks with you, but the quote and the cheese, because there's something beautiful about food that isn't trying to be liked. It just is. Strong, strange, stubborn, like the people who carried it, like the journey itself. That night, As you wrap the remaining cheese and tuck it near your ever-rumbling pickle jar, you whisper, "You two would get along." The jar bubbles softly. The cheese, thankfully, does not. You sleep, while dreamless, except for a moment, where a goat offers you a riddle and then disappears into mist. You wake up feeling strangely wiser. There are a few things you never expect to crave on a 1,000-mile journey through ancient trade routes. One of them is candy. But one afternoon, somewhere near the lush edges of the Fergana Valley, you smell something sweet. Not naturally sweet like fruit, not fermented sweet like that time someone gave you suspicious kumis. No, this is sugar. Burnt, sticky, deliberate sugar. You follow your nose to a street stall, operated by two children and their unimpressed goat. They're pouring something golden and bubbling onto flat stones, then twirling it around sticks. Hard candy, ancient caramel, and it smells like it was made by someone who understands joy. You ask, "What is it?" One kid shrugs. "Melted honey and flour, sometimes herbs." You nod. "Why the goat?" She eats the scraps. "Fair." You try a piece. It cracks gently in your mouth, releasing notes of anise, cinnamon, and a tiny zing of something bitter. It's not modern candy, nothing like chocolate or bubblegum, but it lingers in the most comforting way, like spiced sunlight. A passing trader sees you chewing and smiles. The Persian pull, sticky enough to pull out your teeth, sweet enough to make you forgive it. Later, a Buddhist monk explains that in his monastery, sweets like these were sometimes used as meditation aids. A reminder that pleasure, too, must dissolve, he says solemnly while clearly hiding a second piece in his sleeve. You learn this isn't a one-region wonder. Along the Silk Road, sugar or its older cousins like jaggery and crystallized honey was prized but rare. In places where cane didn't grow, people innovated. Dried mulberries boiled down, dates mashed and sun-baked, flower petals candied in syrup. There's even a theory that the first nougat was born somewhere near Bukhara, as a festival treat for bureaucrats who worked too hard and partied even harder. One Persian source describes a sticky concoction called nif, made with egg whites and thickened grape syrup. Another Central Asian recipe used powdered almond and sugar paste, shaped into tiny animals. Historians are still debating whether these were eaten or just admired until they crumbled into dust. Either outcome seems possible. And then there's the odd legend, a candy so potent it made a general forget he was supposed to invade a city. Probably not true, but deeply relatable. You wrap up a few pieces for later, offering a coin to the kids. The goat tries to eat your cloak. You spend the rest of the day in a slow, happy haze, sticky fingers and sugar on your breath, wondering how many deals along this road were sealed with something sweet rather than gold. The sun sets in orange and violet layers, the wind smelling faintly of flowers and old copper. You lean against your saddlebag, unwrap one last shirt of honey-cracked toy, and think, sometimes history tastes good. By now, you come to understand something essential about the Silk Road. It isn't really a road. It's a moving mosaic, 1,000 tangled footpaths braided together by time, terrain, and tired feet, and scattered across those threads, like breadcrumbs for the curious, are the leftovers of ancient meals. You arrive in a mountain village where the air is sharp with pine and cooking smoke. Here, people don't speak much, but they do eat well. You're served something wrapped in leaves, steamed in clay, and suspiciously chewy. The taste is earthy, smoky, and a little nutty. You ask your host what it is. "Stone cake," they reply. You pause. "Cake made of stone?" "No," they chuckle. "Baked on stone, but also very hard, very old, keeps well, very few teeth required." You're not sure that last part is true. Still, the texture grows on you. Inside are things like barley, cayenne nuts, dried berries, and oddly bits of goat cheese that somehow didn't go bad. It's like a protein bar made by someone who lives in a monastery, climbs cliffs, and distrusts sugar. Later, You hear whispers of even older recipes, of fermented millet paste stored in sheep stomachs, of journey biscuits buried in ash for weeks to dry them out. Some travelers dip these relics in wine or broth to soften them. Others, well, use them as hammers first. There's one curious account, written by a Tang Dynasty customs official, who described a passenger cake envoy offering cakes made of clouds and cracked rice. Scholars are still trying to decode what that means. One theory, a form of early puffed rice cluster, bound with animal fat. Another theory, the man was just being poetic because he was really hungry. In the village, you meet an old woman who still makes a kind of snack once fed to caravans crossing the Gobi. She grinds almonds, apricot kernels, and a bit of black sesame, rolls them with salt and clarified butter, and dries the result in the sun. The locals call them camel bites. You call them surprisingly excellent. You ask her where she learned the recipe. My grandmother, she says, and her grandmother, and her goat. You're not sure if she's joking. You try a few and feel a strange kind of comfort, not just from the flavor, but from the lineage. You're not eating something made to be fancy. You're eating something made to last, to nourish, to carry a person through snow, wind, and sandstorms. And somehow, in that dense, dry, slightly chalky bite, there's an entire legacy of survival. That night, as the cold creeps in, someone starts a fire near the village's edge. You're invited to join. They pass around flat rounds of something between bread and jerky. It's dry, it's salty, you need water, but everyone's smiling, talking, sharing what they have. You take another bite, and you realize that this is what a road tastes like. You're 3 valleys and half a camel ahead of where you started. The jar, still here, the smell, familiar. Your nose may never recover. But tonight, we're not talking about your jar-shaped companion. Tonight, we talk about something rarer than gold in the desert. Ice cream. Yes, ice cream. On the Silk Road, you reach a windswept trading post, nestled between the Teshan Mountains. It's the kind of place where monks rub elbows with smugglers, and someone is always boiling something questionable in a pot. A young boy hands you a wooden bowl and says, "Try this." You look down. Snow, milk, crushed pistachios, a drizzle of honey, and goes that rose water. It's cold, sweet, melts instantly. You blink. What is this? The boy grins. Mountain ice. My uncle calls it snow pudding from Persia. It turns out, travelers from as far as ancient Mesopotamia had figured out how to mix snow with milk or fruit to create cold desserts. The trick was storage ice pits, stone jars buried in shade, and sometimes mule trains racing ice down from high elevations at dusk. In places like Bog, Bamiyan, and eventually even Kashgar, snow was gathered at night, packed into caves, and rationed through the spring. Add goat's milk, a pinch of saffron, or even fermented mare's milk, and foil, Silk Road sorbet. One historian claims that in Saktiana, royalty used to flavor snow with mashed apricots and preserved lemons. Another scholar disagrees, saying that's pure fiction or excellent marketing. As always, academia is split, but the taste, unforgettable. The dessert spreads among your caravan faster than gossip. Even your camel perks up when he smells it. At the next outpost, you're served a different version. Iced barley milk mixed with rock sugar and pine resin. It's less of a dessert and more of a dare, but it's refreshing in a weird, herbal, slightly alarming way. A traveling monk explains that cold sweets were often given to soothe headaches and cool the liver. Another merchant swears they were used to bribe customs officers. You believe both. That evening, huddled around a smoky brazier, someone begins telling a story of a long-lost kingdom that only traded in flouncing treats. The king allegedly owned a yet power churn. Every full moon, he'd invite visiting envoys to taste the latest concoction, fig frost, almond chill, even fermented grape ice. You ask if the story's true. No idea, the storyteller says. But wouldn't it be lovely if it were? You nod, because it would. You lick the last of your now warm snow pudding and wonder how many flavors have been lost to time, how many recipes faded with the cities they were born in, and how someone, somewhere, once carved ice with a bronze spoon, just so the guest could sigh with happiness. In that moment, you realize not everything traded on the Silk Road had to last forever. Some things like snow, like sweetness, like stories were meant to melt. It's morning again, and your jar makes a sound. Not a gurgle this time, more of a purr. You gently tap the lid. It responds with a soft blower, comforting, alarming. You move on. Today's stretch of the journey winds through a narrow canyon, sun-warmed and wind whistling, with walls edged by centuries of passing caravans, and carved into the cliffside a tiny shrine, not to a god, or a spirit, or even a famous warrior, to a spoon. Yes, a spoon is shaped from bronze, nestled in an alcove, and cased in a frame of dried vines. Someone has written beneath it in faint paint, the town's guide, the trader's friend. You blink, a local guide chuckles beside you. This valley is famous, he says, for being the birthplace of a very important invention, the folding travel spoon. You laugh, then realize he's serious. According to legend and several dusty scrolls, long-distance traders on the Silk Road often carry personal spoons, forks, or even small greater set stools customized for quick meals on the go. In some places, these utensils were heirlooms, passed down, decorated, honored, and they had to be foldable because who had time for full-size cutlery when outrunning desert bandits? A Mongol chieftain once reportedly had a silver spoon with a horse motif that also functioned as a signal whistle. Another tale tells of a spoon with a hidden blade inside used not for combat, but for slicing particularly stubborn dates. The academic world, naturally, argues over these claims. One camp believes the stories are true. Another believes traders simply got creative with broken tin poles. A third insists none of this matters and we should just be thankful for chopsticks. You, meanwhile, are fascinated. You start noticing utensil customs at every rest stop. In one village, people eat lentils with thin flat stones. In another, goat hair spoons are used from milk porridge but never soup. Too absorbent, the cook says. And in a merchant tent, a young woman stirs jam with a utensil carved from camel bone. She sees your expression and grins. Passed down from my grandmother, she says. She used it to sweeten salty tea when traveling with envoys. You look at your hands, empty, just fingers and your jar. The guide, sensing your silent utensil envy, offers you a tiny horn spoon. Keep it, he says, for future emergencies. You nod in gratitude. It fits nicely in your travel pouch. Weirdly, it makes you feel more official, like you've earned a badge or joined a club you didn't know existed. That night, you make a simple rice mash. You unscrew the jar carefully, just a whiff, enough to flavor, not to curse. Then you use your new spoon to stir it all together. It's not bad, slightly alarming, but edible. And as you eat under the stars, the spoon warm in your hand, the jar murmuring contentedly beside you, you realize something. The Silk Road didn't just carry silk or spices or odd jars. It carried habits, rituals, even the tools of comfort. And somewhere, centuries ago, someone else was probably doing the exact same thing. Stirring, watching the stars, wondering if their spoon made them look cool. You're not sure when the jar became your favorite conversation starter. Maybe it was in the oasis town, where a Saudian baker offered you flatbread in exchange for just a whiff. Or maybe it was when a Kashmiri traveler asked if he could paint it just the jar, not you. Either way, by now, you've embraced your role. You are the person with the mysterious, mildly threatening, possibly divine pickled thing. And in this leg of the journey, the jar gets invited to dinner. You and your caravan have been taken in by a local hostess scholar, stooped with age and bent with curiosity. His home is tucked between apricot groves, the walls perfumed with clay and fruit, the air calm like someone paused the wind for tea. He seats everyone on floor cushions, offers rose water, dates, then he looks at you. I heard, he says softly, you carry a jar. You nod. May I see it? The room falls quiet. You unwrap it, slowly, like a sacred object or a suspicious onion. The scholar leans in, eyes watering from the vinegar, then smiles like he's found an old friend. Do you know, he says, that in certain corners of Central Asia, pickling was once considered a philosophical art? You did not know that? Fermentation, he continues, was thought to mirror the soul's journey by life, changed by time, made deeper by decay. One scholar even claimed the best pickles could teach you patience and humility. You look at your jar, it blurps in reply. A historian laughs. That one sounds like it has opinions. Dinner proceeds: steamed barley, apricot stew, a side of flatbread slathered with spicy chickpeas. Everything is warm, fragrant, and joyfully mild. And then, halfway through the meal, the host gestures towards your jar. Would you allow us, he asks, to taste it? You freeze. Taste it. People have smelled it, coked it, written about it, but eaten. The whole room waits. Some look hopeful, some terrified. You glance at the jar. It looks smug. With hesitant hands, you open the lid. A vinegary sigh escapes. The host uses the tip of a spoon to extract a single leaf. He places it delicately on his tongue. The room holds its breath. He chews once, then twice, then nods. Yes, he says. It tastes like regret and history. The room erupts in polite murmurs. A few others volunteer. One spits it out. One asks for the recipe. One bows respectfully to the jar and refuses to speak for the rest of the evening. A young boy leans over and whispers, "It's the most famous thing I've ever tasted." Later, as you help clean the plates, the host pulls you aside. That jar, he says, carries more than food. It carries attention, curiosity, the kind of legend that grows in telling. And maybe that's true, because you're not even surprised anymore when someone at the next stop recognizes it from a story told by a traveling weaver with a good nose. And as you wrap the jar once more, its scent lingering in the fabric like a stubborn memory, you wonder, how many stories are like this? Little things, leftovers, fermented fragments of ordinary life that somehow become myth. You pat the lid, the jar purrs back. You're nearly at the end of your route when you meet the only person more obsessed with pickled food than you. It happens in the foothills near Samarkand. You've stopped at a bustling way station half tavern, half trade post, half pickle museum. You're not sure. The sign out front reads the brine shrine, and the door smells like commitment. Inside, the walls are lined with jars. Big ones, small ones, jars shaped like camels, jars with wax seals stamped with mysterious sigils. There's even a decorative jar chandelier. And at the center of it all, a woman in a teal robe and goggles, lovingly polishing a ceramic lid with a brush made of donkey hair. She looks up, sees you and your Jaren guest so dramatically you fear she might faint. Is that Imperial Grade Type B? You nod, already bracing for the questions. She bolts upright. I've only seen sketches. I heard a Mongol envoy once tried to trade 6 eggs for one. You mumble something humble like, "It's pungent." She doesn't even flinch. "I'm Meram," she says, pickle historian, curator, founder of the semi-fermented archive of Tanira culinary ephemera. You blink. That's a very specific museum. Everything worth preserving is specific, she says, solemnly. She insists on a formal inspection. You unwrap the jar with practiced hands. It gives its usual, soft, faintly accusatory. Meram inhales deeply, then closes her eyes like she's praying. Coriander, oxidized brass, hints of horse blanket. She opens one eye. "May I?" You're not sure what she means by "may I," so you just nod. She reaches beneath her worktable and pulls out a scroll. Not to write but to compare, side by side. You stare. It's an ancient shipping inventory, written in Tang calligraphy. You spot a line, "Vegetal conserve." Grade B, cloud sealed, for ritual or export use only. Bingo. C, she whispers. You're holding history, tank culinary diplomacy, fermentation as foreign policy. They didn't send warriors to send jars. And in that moment, it kind of hits you. All along this journey, you've been wondering what this weird cargo meant, why people stared, why monks hummed when they saw it, why traders whispered like it was cursed, why children pointed like it was a dragon in a bottle. And maybe it's not just that it smells funny, or that it might possibly contain ancient spirit lettuce. Maybe it's because humans can't resist turning food into stories. A fruit becomes a myth, a grain becomes a kingdom, and a stubborn, gurgling jar of pickled lettuce becomes, well, ew. Miriam thanks you for sharing, hands you a small wrapped parcel just in case you ever want to pickle your own memories, and waves you off with tears in her eyes. That night, you camp under trees thick with starlight. The journey is almost over. You sit by the fire, place the jar down beside you like an old friend, and for once it's quiet. No hissing, no blooping, just warm glass, glowing faintly in the firelight. And you say, "You carried me, didn't you?" No reply, but somehow, you know it's listening. And now, traveler, your journey winds down. The stars above grow softer. The campfire has settled into a slow, pulsing glow. You're warm beneath your blanket. The air smells faintly of dust. An old spice, maybe cumin, maybe memory. Somewhere nearby, a camel exhales with the weight of 100 quiet miles. You've walked far tonight through deserts and mountains, across time and cultures, following the trail of forgotten snacks and half-remembered dreams. And all the while, a single jar stayed beside you. Odd, useless, important. You're not quite sure what you were carrying anymore. Maybe it was just a story, or maybe the story was carrying you. Let that thought settle like sand in a bottle. Let the rhythm of history hush you. Breathe in, breathe out, and let yourself drift gently, slowly into the warm mist of sleep.